What you are about to witness is a debate between the tropical and sidereal points of view. A debate is not a fight. A debate is an opportunity for usually two people to present 2 points of view on an issue. My guest will always have 10 minutes to present his or her argument, point of view, opinion, whatever they want to present in the 10 minutes, which will be followed by me having 4 minutes to reply to it, which means not to bring up something new from outer space or something out of the blue. I have to respond to the points that they brought up. And then finally, the guest has 1 minute to give a final statement, 1 or 2 minutes. So it'll be 10 minutes, 4 minutes, 1 minute, and then it'll switch around. So then I'll have 10 minutes, the guest will have 4 minutes, and then I'll have a minute or two. So that's what it is. It is not going to be a fighting match. It's not going to be an ego thing. It's not going to be I'm better than you. One way is right, one way is wrong, blah, blah, blah. It's a chance for everybody to hear the information out in the open and thereby be able to form a more educated and informed opinion on this important topic.
I'll give a brief introduction to the person who will be furnishing the opposing arguments today, Partho Banerjee. Partho is a man with a good professional career who has kind of sort of transitioned into doing astrology. Partho became involved in this debate mostly because he wouldn't leave me alone on Facebook. So I invited him to just hash this out in a video, give him a chance to present his arguments in a concise way and see how I would reply. So, without further ado, let's see how this goes.
Hello Vic and everyone who is watching this debate on sidereal versus tropical. So without much ado about anything, I will straight away jump into the topic. Vic has more than nicely explained over the years what the difference is all about in the sidereal versus tropical debate, and no one disputes the fact that we are looking at the same zodiac. Only problem is, where do you count the beginning of zodiac from? Put precisely, where do we count Aries, the sign Aries from? That is the main point of debate. So far whatever evidences in the public domain have been given by anyone from tropical Vedic astrologer side, including Vic, they all talked about the vernal points, the equinoxes and the solstices, but none of them have spoken about where does Aries begin from. So that is our goal post. That is where we have to score the goal, because rest everything is kind of by and large okay. No one have major differences on that. The differences can be minor, but this is the major difference. So let us keep that goalpost in front of us. Where does Aries begin? That's it. So when you have a debate, you have two sides, and debates run on facts and evidences. These are the heart and soul of any debate. If you take them out, any of these, all you are left with argumentation and verbal exchanges, the kinds we are watching on the media everywhere, the political debates. So we are trying to do something more constructive than that, trying to arrive at a conclusion, something that gives us conclusive evidence, right? So, and I fully agree with Vic in his debate with Richard Fiedler, where he categorically told him that if we are Vedic astrologers, if we say we are Vedic astrologers, that's, I think, the phrase he used, rightly so, then we must see which zodiac is consistent with the classics, the text, the classical text, and logically. I fully agree with that observation by Vic in that video. So taking that further, now I am standing in a 15 minutes of video. These days videos are very popular, so I'm up for it. I have already given 5,000 words of evidences from our classical text, from history, and from astronomical and scientific facts in 3 series articles. in my website astrologyofbharat.org. That's org.com. Part 1 deals with the classical references. I have created a short URL that goes, it's a big link. Okay, so tinyurl.com/astrodebate1. That is where the evidences are. So I have not prepared any presentation like corporate style. I have done that enough earlier. I am rather old-fashioned guy, so my presentation is my evidences. So tinyurl.com/astrodebate1. That is part 1, and part 2 is the same thing, just astrodebate 2, no space. Similarly for part 3, which deals with chart analysis. Chart 1 with classical reference, part 1 with classical reference, part 2 with history and astronomy, and part 3 with chart analysis. So that's how I see the debate as classical references. Does it support the historical part of it, and it makes scientific sense. That's it. So we'll try to touch upon those in this short 15 minutes. First things first, classical references. The Bible of Vedic astrology, as it is called, Bharat Shastra. Another second most credible Vedic astrology document, Brihad Jatak. These documents say they hit the goal at the goal post. Remember what's the goal post? Where does Aries begin? Where does zodiac start? It says that zodiac starts from Ashwini Nakshatra. Chapter 3 in Virat Shastra, verse 4 in most of the versions, like Padmanabh Sharma, R. Santanam, and other popular versions have it in subsequent chapters, 5. Tara Shankar, Shastri, Ganesh Dutt Pathak, all these different versions at different chapters, but the shloka is there, which says that Ashwini Nakshatra is the beginning of zodiac. Mesha starts from there. Ashwini and Mesha both are together. Over. So that's the evidence, that's the fact, that's the Vedic astrology. Okay. So Vedic astrology lives in classics. The system of analysis, prognosis, and predictions that we have are all derived from Vedic astrology classical text. Everyone has different systems. I have different system, Vic has different, everyone has different, but we all have derived the words like Kalbal, Sthanbal, Mul Trikona, Dasha. All these words are not our creation, these are there in Vedic text. So Vedic text, what they say about practicing the Jataka, that is human horoscopy, the Muhurta, electional astrology, these all are there in the Vedic classics. So these are the most authentic classics I'm talking about, and my evidences don't stop at that. They continue many more evidences. Even Atharvaveda also talks about the fixation of the zodiac, that it is fixed. He has used poetic and allegorical form to mention that. I have given those specific references in my part 1. Anyone who knows, who can, you don't have to understand Sanskrit. I have broken it down word by word for you, the ones which are important words, so that anyone who doesn't understand Sanskrit can also go through that. Those who understand Sanskrit, well and good. It's obvious for you. So that is about the classical references. It's very, very decisive, clear, and I am hoping that Vic is going to give us counter evidences which match the credibility and the volume of what I have already given. So I am standing in a 15 minutes of debate where I have nothing to prove beyond what I have already proven, and I request that the ball is in court of tropical Vedic astrologers like Vic. The onus is on them to restore the merit of the tropical argument here. That's the situation actually. He wanted a debate, so I am appearing in a debate, which I am glad he did. But a debate is run on evidences and facts. So I request Vic that in your 15 minutes of video, please provide some credible references which say where does Aries begin. That's all. That's all we are looking for. We are not looking for anything else, because this Sion, as you call this vernal point zodiac, is mentioned in our text in Vishnu Puran. It is mentioned, Khand 5, as you have rightly given, but it does not say where does Aries begin from. It says the core. Yes, we know that it is at the center of it. Nakshatra Nabhav is the word. Surya Siddhant says in the first chapter, where does Aries begin from? It says it's from Ashwini. Right in the first chapter where you talk about the basics. Okay. And the word reference in Surya Siddhant in chapter 14 is very simple. It does not say where does Aries begin. Number 2, it talks of the Rashis in terms of Ritu. Ritu means season. And I think seriously research should be done. And in India, people should be more open-minded to adopt a tropical for studying the weather more closely in astrological perspective. But for studying human horoscopy, for Muhurta, Sidereal is the zodiac, because all our reputed, credible Jyotish texts are saying one thing. There is no difference on that. That where does Aries begin? Okay, that's about the classical references part. Now I will talk about the historical and astronomical side of the debate. Okay, so let's talk about the historical and astronomical side of this whole thing debate. From history, the problem with Vedic history is that it is so old that it far predates the historical records. So that's a limitation. So going by what is available in records, the oldest zodiac is Babylonian. They are the ones who started using zodiac, and Babylonian zodiac was sidereal essentially. I have given references from Francesca Rochberg's book in part 2, and she has specifically I mentioned the page numbers also, and the link to that book is also there. You can read that. That how in ascertaining the position of planets, it was sidereal in Babylonian times, and their astronomy was very well developed those days. Now, what changed from zodiac sidereal to tropical? Well, Alexander, when he invaded and Babylon fell to Alexander in 331 BC, there was a guy, historian called Callisthenes. I have given all that story here. I'm trying to squeeze in here. That guy, who was nephew of Aristotle, the famous Aristotle. So Callisthenes was under instructions from his uncle. He sent all those astronomical and astrological texts and tablets to Greece. And when the Greece saw the mention of the words vernal points, the equinox and solstices, just like Vishnu Puran does, mention is there. They got very excited, but what they did is, that is how Hellenistic astrology was born. What they did is, they used that vernal point as the beginning of the zodiac. But there also, they did not give vernal point at 0 degree Aries. It was all over the place. So there are like at least 2 popular versions. One version put the vernal point at 8 degree Aries. The other one put at 10 degree Aries. There is one more third one popular, 15 degree Aries. So it was all over the places. It was not at 0 degree Aries. That is very important point. That is very important point. So Hellenistic astrology, the way tropical was conceived, it was not at 0 degree Aries. The other proof of this fact is there is a book, Greek Horoscopes, by Otto Neugebauer. Okay, I have given that reference here as well, and there are co-authors also of that book. He has given that post Hipparchus. Hipparchus is the guy who who is believed to have discovered or known about the precision of equinoxes. Equinoxes were supposed to be fixed by the Greeks way back in 331 when they devised this tropical zodiac. They thought it is fixed. The equinox, the vernal points were fixed, the equinox was fixed, they thought. So when they were ascertaining the zodiac, the Aries 8 degree, 10 degree with equinoxes, though it was not 0 degree, but yet they thought it is going to be fixed. That's the irony of this debate. That when it was conceived, it was believed that it was fixed because they did not know about the precision of equinox, that the equinox is moving backwards, retro. Thereafter, 500 years later, Hipparchus came to know about the precision, but he did not know that Earth is not at the center of the universe, of the solar system. We call it solar system. So they believed in a geocentric world. That is why they were obsessed with the equinoxes and the solstices. They did not know about it. That it's the planets that go around the sun, not the planets go around the earth. So this was quite Quranic view those days, because things were not known in Europe at that time. So after the fall of the Greeks, the Romans also copied the same thing, and they continued, and then the Dark Ages started, and no one knew what they would do, because these things were evil. Talking of planets and sky, universe, sun, these things were considered evil, okay, blasphemous. So they could not discuss openly. So they were not able to, even if they watched, they could not talk about the divergence, the gap between the times that equinox was moving. That's the irony of this debate. It was thought to be fixed, but it was not fixed. And thereafter, when Copernicus in 15th century, thereby after 100 years Kepler, when they told the world that, look, it's not the planets that go around the earth, it's the planets that go around the sun. Sun was at the center. So astrology was suddenly, kind of ridiculed. It became subject of ridicule, something backward, something unscientific, because of this tropical zodiac, the way it was enforced by Ptolemy in his Almagest. And this Almagest was translated to Latin only almost like 800 to 1000 years later, in 12th century. So people, when they were adapting to this 0 degree Aries vernal point, they did not know what they were doing. That's the irony of this whole debate. So in conclusion, I would rather trust for Vedic astrology, the kinds of sage Parashar and Banerjee, who have clearly said where does Aries begin, rather than Hipparchus and Ptolemy, who were still trying to understand the world and the universe around them, and they thought that the planets go around the earth. So I will rather trust Parashar and Banerjee than Ptolemy and Hipparchus for my Vedic astrology. With that humble submission, submission, I hope that Vic is going to give us some evidences from classical text which say where does the Aries begin. Rest everything is not that important as much as this point. Thank you.
So your presentation had two sections. The first one is where the zodiac begins, and the second one is the history of how the tropical concept came into being. So let's start with the first part. You claim that the classical Indian texts unequivocally state that Aries begins with Ashvini. But unfortunately, this is not true. The fact is that the classical texts sometimes say that Aries begins with Ashvini, and sometimes say that the solstices and equinoxes mark the beginning of Aries, Libra, Cancer, and Capricorn. That's the fact. They say two different things. So you say that the Brihat Parashar Horshastra 3.4 says that Aries starts with Ashvini, but the problem is that it doesn't say this at all. Akashe yani drishyante jyotir bimbanyane kasha teshu nakshatra sangyani graha sangyani kanichit. That means if you look at the sky, you see a lot of dots of light. Some of those dots of light you can understand as nakshatras, which are constellations. And other ones, those are called grahas, which are planets. Tani nakshatra namani sthirasthanani yani vai gachanto bani grhalanti sadadamye te graha. The ones that are called nakshatras are called that because they don't move. The other ones that are called grahas, planets, they are called grahas because they move, as if they had will. Now it's going to talk about the constellations. But chakrasya nagashyamsa ashvinyadi samadvaya. The celestial wheel has amshas or integral portions, and those are named Ashvini and so on. And then the final line is tad dvadasha vibhagastu tulya meshadi sangyakaha. It also has similar separate divisions, 12 of them, known as Mesha, which is Aries, and so on. This doesn't say that Aries begins with Ashvini. It says that the nakshatras begin with Ashvini, and it says that the Rashis begin with Mesha or Aries. And actually it differentiates the nakshatras from the Rashis, which is very important and is the key. The nakshatras are amshas or integral portions of the stars that you can see. But there's another way to describe the sky, which is with vibhaga instead of amsha. It's not an integral portion of the stars, but it's a separate way of dividing things, vibhaga, which is Tulia, analogous to or can be equated to the stars in some way. So the claim that the Brihat Parashara Shastra supports a sidereal zodiac is just untrue. You also claim that the first chapter of Surya Siddhanta says that Aries begins with Ashwini. Well, once again, it just doesn't. The chapter explains how you can figure out where you are in the cosmic span of time, which involves days of Brahma, Manvantaras, and Yugas. And it says there's a way that you can tell from the planetary positions where you are in the history of the universe. But in order to do that, you need to know the speed at which the planets move, so that you can calculate the current position subtracted from some reference point that marks the beginning of some period of cosmic history. So in order to tell you the speed of the planets, it tells you how many times the planets revolve past a certain star. And that certain star is Revati, Yogatar, which is Zeta Pisceum. So that's all that's in the first chapter of the Surya Siddhanta. It doesn't talk about Aries at all. You might get a licentious translation or commentary that just assumes that Zeta Pisces equals the beginning of Aries, but it's not in the Surya Siddhanta. It's not about Aries. It's about the planets and how fast they move in reference to a star so that you can calculate your yuga. It has nothing to do with the 12-sign zodiac or horoscopic natal astrology. You also claim that the Atharva Veda says that the zodiac is fixed, and therefore it must be sidereal because it's fixed. So find the Atharva Veda, which is an allegory about the zodiac. It does say that the celestial wheel is a vichal, which means it's fixed, but it does not say that the zodiac is fixed to stars. It just says that it's fixed, which means it doesn't change. So in fact, this Atharva Veda doesn't mention stars at all. It mentions days, months, and seasons as the pegs, spokes, and hubs of the wheel. And these days, months, and seasons have a permanent or fixed relationship to each other. I don't recommend using the Atharva Veda reference to settle any debate on astronomy. But if this reference does support anything, it supports the tropical zodiac, because the wheel is based on the hubs, which are the seasons, which are based on the equinoxes. Finally, you said that Surya Siddhanta 14 is not a definition of the zodiac, it's just a definition of seasons or ritu, which is absurd. It's like saying the movie The Joker is not about the Joker. The Surya Siddhanta chapter 14 has an explicit definition of the zodiac, which I'll explain later, and it explicitly says that Aries begins with the equinox and Cancer begins with the solstice, etc. And like the Atharva Veda, it also describes the relationship between these equinoxes and solstices and the seasons. Now, let me move on to respond to your version of history, which is that the Greeks perverted the original sidereal zodiac of the Babylonians. Modern siderealists promote the idea that the Babylonian used a sidereal zodiac, but if you just read Mulapin with an objective mind, you'll see that they had a 12-fold, 30-degree division of the sky or the year based on equinoxes and solstices, exactly as we do now in our tropical system. And they also had a sidereal system of dividing the sky into 18, not 12, but 18 divisions of constellations, which were not Aries, Taurus, etc. So the idea that the Greeks invented the tropical zodiac is ridiculous because the Babylonians have a tropical system. Also, besides the Babylonians, India also had a tropical system, and the records of it are in the Siddhantas, Puranas, Brahmanas, and even the Samhitas and Vedangas, which are supposed to be much older than the Greeks. So you can't really argue that the tropical zodiac was invented by the Greeks, and I wish people would stop arguing that. A much more accurate version of history would probably arise if you realize that the tropical concept of space and the sidereal concept of space both coexist and are found in all ancient cultures. However, the tropical concept of space is more difficult to use because it requires mathematical calculation of where things are, because you don't see the tropical divisions of space at the same time as you see the planets. So to use a tropical system is much more complicated, requires a lot more math. This is why in the ancient times, the vast majority of divinational astrology was done using sidereal things, the constellations, which were variously numbered in different cultures. But once the math developed, the popularity of the tropical zodiac took off. The way that the math developed was to try to figure out where a planet was. We think the moon should be in Gemini today. How do you know? You can't see the moon and Gemini at the same time. Okay, we can correlate with Gemini's relationship to a star, and then we can see the moon at the same time in relationship to that star. This is why you get correlations between the zodiac signs and the sidereal marker stars. That's why you find a lot of references to sidereal marker stars in surviving ancient horoscopes. And this also explains why some of the Greeks, like you mentioned, were talking about the equinox being somewhere other than 0 degrees Aries. What the Mulapin observes is that the equinox was in Mula Mul, which is Pleiades. And then what Naburi Manu observes sometime later is that the equinox is now in Mulahuga, which is the farmer. And Mulahuga is roughly analogous to the Greek constellation Aries. Hopefully this makes sense. I have no more time to fit in rebuttals into a short time format. But I have done a live session on my YouTube channel where I explored these very points in a little more relaxed pace. So to summarize my rebuttal, your version of history is faulty because it's built on the faulty premise that the Greeks invented the tropical zodiac, when the fact is that the tropical zodiac existed in pre-Greek cultures. Also, it's totally wrong for you to say that the Indian classics unequivocally say that Aries begins with Ashwini. The truth is that sometimes they say that and sometimes they don't. So it's something that you have to sort out carefully and not dismiss in haste. And if you do that, you will find, as I'll show in my presentation, that the truly fundamental classics of India describe the zodiac permanently affixed to the equinoxes and having some temporary relationship to the observable stars.
Okay, so I'm recording this on a different date, so you see me in a different dress. So jumping straight away to Vic's rebuttal of my 15 minutes presentation. He doesn't agree that Brihat Shastra unequivocally talks about starting of zodiac, is from Ashwini. If that's not the case, then what does Ashwini Adi means? Ashwini Adi means starting from Ashwini. What does Meshadi means? Meshadi means starting from Mesh, that is Aries, onwards. This is consistent with all the Sanskrit shlokas we have in all the astrological texts. It's like they have written many places. Suryadi Graha, Adityadi Graha. This is typical of writing Sanskrit shlokas. So the starting word that you are asking for is there. And there is nothing called separate. This is not talking about separate parts in the zodiac. I think the commentary that you are reading got it wrong, because there is no word in shloka that indicates separate. In fact, the word is tad dwadash vibhagastu. Tad means that. So it defines the zodiac as 27 division nakshatra, starting with the Ashwini Adi. Then it says tad Dwadash Vibhagastu, means that part which is just described as 27 nakshatras, that is divided into 12 parts, starting from Aries, Meshadi, and this Tulya. Tulya means comparable. So this 12 division versus 27 division that start at the same point, Tada is comparable. Where is the doubt? Okay, now even if you still have a doubt, okay, still if you want to be absolutely 100% sure, then Varamira thought about it, that okay, fine. Rishi Parashara has said this, so let me be even more emphatic about it. He wrote the word Ashwin Meshadi Prathama. Ashwin Mesh means Aries, Prathama means first, starting with these two things. So there is no doubt. And he goes on to say that the 9 divisions of a sign, they fall at the feet of Nakshatra, that is Nakshatra Pada. So he's tying up the Navamsha with the Nakshatra Pada. There is no room for doubt. And Varamira was not only astronomer, he was an astrologer, and he was new enough to know everything, and he was old enough to not dismiss him. Okay, now third reference that you made is Atharvaveda. I never spoke about stars in that shloka. All I said in that shloka was, which you missed out, is the 12 divisions in the sky are fixed. The Rashi, the signs are fixed, as if someone has fixed them with nails, 360 nails. It's talking of 360 degrees. So it is perfectly, in tune with what sidereal astrology is about. So it does not talk about stars in that shloka. I have also given 3-4 more evidences which you have not spoken about. The Surya Siddhanta is wrong. Your interpretation is wrong, and I have given the reasons why it is wrong. I can't explain in 2, 3, 5 minutes. So that's there in my evidences. Please read that and tell me which shloka I got it wrong and which word in that one. And talking of history, you started with the phrase saying your version of history. That's the problem with history, and that's what I wanted to stay away from. That theoretical debating will not achieve anything. You will have just another debate to put in our channel, I will have in my channel. The problem with theoretical debating is that to thousands of years old will keep on debating the astronomical facts. Let's talk about the evidences. I have given evidence that none of these texts, whether it's Mulapin or our Veda Purana, they just talk about vernal points, but they do not talk about that Aries begins there. Okay, so and I have given counter evidence to prove with further studies if you are interested in research. Okay, people who have worked in this for like a century and a half, since that time people are working, and I have pointed to the references of those people that 0 degree Aries is not synchronized at vernal point. If you have counter evidence to come up with something, you please give me. And as far as Vedic astrologers are concerned, the text where I have learned all my Vedic astrology from, that is the Jyotish classics, they unequivocally state, starting from Virad Prashar, Virad Jataka, two most reputed Vedic astrology texts, and others which I have given in my evidences, they all say that Aries 0 degree is synchronized at Ashwini. That's all. So there is no room for debate on that one. Theoretically, we can debate. My version of history and your version of history will be different. But let's go by the evidences. If you have evidence of the historical charts, like I have given, please come up with that so that we know how did they erect the horoscope for human horoscopy. That's what we are looking for. We are not looking to settle an astronomical debate. We are looking to settle the human horoscopy debate here. So that's the goalpost. I'm again reinforcing, and thank you for allowing me to overstep my time limit.
So you're contesting the way I've explained Brihat Parashar or Shastra. So let me just explain it one more time. Yes, you're right that the term Ashvinyadi means Ashvini and so on. But the phrase is Ashvinyadi Samavayaha, which means the names. Samavaya means names. The names Ashvini and so on. So the sentence means the names Ashvini, Bharani, Kritika, etc. refer to the divisions of the celestial wheel. Okay? The suffix adi means the list begins with this. It's just very similar to the English word etc., the way that adi is used as a suffix. So Meshadi means Mesh and so on, but we have Sangyaka. The phrase Meshadi Sangyaka means the names, Mesha, Vrisha, and so on, Aries, Taurus, Gemini, so on. These names refer to Dvadasha Vibhaga, the 12 sections. 12 sections of what? Of Tat. Tat means that. Now you seem to be claiming that means the nakshatra divisions. Nakshatra divisions is not given in the 6th case. The 6th case genitive indicates who owns something, who possesses something. So the Bhachakrasya is in the 6th case genitive, meaning that the wheel of the sky possesses these divisions. And the divisions are either into amshas named Ashvini and so on, or into vibhagas of 12 named Mesha and so on. The fact that these two divisions are different is evidence just in the fact that that they exist as two different things, but also it's emphatically declared in the word to, which means but, and differentiates the following thing from the previous thing. And it's also emphasized by the word tulya, which means that the signs are similar to the nakshatras, but not exactly the same. Now, you also quoted from Brihat Jataka. So this is finally a good quote. In all the previous things that you tried to claim state that Ashvini starts with Aries, you were wrong. But here's one where you're right. Here's a statement from Brihat Jataka that actually does say Ashvini and Aries start together. The same author, however, Varahamihira, he defines explicitly that Aries and Libra begin with the equinoxes and Capricorn and Cancer begin with the solstices. So the same author in two different books is saying two different apparently contradictory things. So let me resolve that as a part of my presentation, which I'll now do for you. Okay, here's my 15-minute presentation, which is slightly different from the one that I did previously with Richard Fidler. So if you're very interested in my point of view, please also see the presentation that I gave in my debate with Richard Fidler. Where we agree and disagree, tropical and sidereal schools agree on everything except how to establish 0 degrees Aries. So that's the point in question here. There's two basic theories. The sidereal theory is that the 12 divisions start from a star. And the tropical theory is that the 12 divisions start from or are based on waypoints called tropos in the sun's journey. So these things are kind of basic, and I'm going really fast over them because I've explained these and other people have explained these things in more detail. Now let's examine a textual reference from what's definitely arguably the most important Siddhanta or astronomical treatise from India. And remember, astronomy is the basis for astrology. So let's see what this text has to say about how you find 0 degrees Aries, or how you find the specific borders of the zodiac signs. The text, now we're talking about chapter 14, text 7 through 10. It talks about something called Bhachakra, which means the celestial wheel, the wheel of the sky. It talks about Bhachakra Nabhi, and locating Nabhao, the hub of this wheel. It says that you have to first know about Vishuvat Dutiyam, which are 2 equinoxes. And then what you want to do is Samasutragram, connect those 2 equinoxes with a line to find the hub. And then you will also do the same thing with the 2 solstices, Ayanam Dutiyam Chaiva. So, by the intersecting of these 2 lines drawn from the equinoxes and solstices, you find the hub of the wheel of the sky. And the importance of the hub is that the hub is the fixed point of the wheel. The wheel rotates around the hub and doesn't change its relationship to the hub. The wheel of the sky is affixed to a hub determined by equinoxes and solstices. It just says these 4 points, these 2 equinoxes and 2 solstices are very famous and important. Then it says, Tad Antareshu Sankranti. Sankranti means a border, and you know, almost every Indian knows Sankranti means the border between signs, the way we use it in astronomy and astrology. Tad Antareshu Sankranti Dvitiyam Dvitiyam Puna. Just draw 2 borders in between each of these 4 points. So now you have a wheel that looks like this. It's starting to look very familiar now. Now, this statement right here is exactly where it specifically says the borders of these signs are exactly analogous with specific equinoctial or solstical points. So specifically it says here, Bhanur Makara Sankrante Sanmasa Uttarayanam. The sun is going to climb Uttarayana from the border of Makara, Capricorn, for 6 months. So you see, there's 12 divisions here, 6 on one side, 6 on the other. And they call this Sankranti right here, this border right here, is called the Makar Sankranti. It's the beginning of Capricorn. Then you're going to have 6 Sankrantis till you get to the next statement, Karkadeshtu, till it gets to Karka, or Cancer. And at which point it's going to then descend Dakshinayana for another 6 months. Now, what is it talking about months? And the final statement is Meshadyo Todashaite Masastar Eva Vatsara. The months that we're talking about here are definitely the signs beginning with Mesh, beginning with Aries. So this is how Surya Siddhanta defines the zodiac. And this is how you establish 0 degrees Aries, 0 degrees Libra, 0 degrees Cancer, 0 degrees of anything. Specifically, this particular one is starting with 0 Capricorn. So it defines the zodiac as a wheel affixed to a hub. And that hub is defined by solstices and equinoxes. And based on those solstices and equinoxes, you get 12 divisions. Most Puranas have an astronomical section where they talk about astronomy. And whenever they define the zodiac there, they confirm the same. Now, let's talk about contradictions. So they seem to be contradicting themselves. In one place, they seem to be saying Aries begins from a star, namely Ashvini. And in another place, they seem to be saying Capricorn begins with the solstice, which means that Aries doesn't begin with a star, it begins with an equinox. So these contradictions are there. How various people deal with these contradictions in various ways. Most people just pick one and ignore the other one. And the way it is in India, most people just ignore the tropical definition of the zodiac, and they just only pay attention to the fact that it said that Ashvini and Aries start together. In the West, most people forget that the stars do something, and they only think that there's a tropical zodiac, and they take lunar mansions and weld them to the tropical zodiac, which is also a mistake. So that's one way of dealing with these contradictions, just ignore one. The other way is to just think, well, see, these people were stupid, or they were confused, or they didn't even realize they were contradicting themselves because they didn't know about precession of equinoxes. I don't do either of those approaches. I don't see it that way. I don't think the astrologers were confused, and I also don't want to only take half of their statements. What I see is that it was necessary for these classical and ancient astrologers to mention and describe the relationship between the equinox-based signs and the star-based nakshatras. Why? Why did they had to describe the relationship between the stars and the signs? Because without doing so, they wouldn't have been able to develop the math that they needed to develop to be able to use the 12 signs. So, in summary, the classical Indian texts, and this will be mirrored all over the world, they define the zodiac as divisions of the sky in reference to solstices and equinoxes. But then in the same text, they're going to make note of how those divisions relate to the stars, aka the nakshatras. And then often they do us a real favor, like for example in Surya Siddhanta chapter 3, they often come out and explicitly say, hey, this relationship will change over time. So in other words, to put it briefly, they define the zodiac based on equinoxes, then they describe the relationship between that zodiac and stars, and then they also tell you that you need something called ayanamsha to measure the amount of movement from the ayana to that point. From the ayana means solstice, so from the solstice to the reference point, you need an ayanamsha. So it's not a contradiction. It's not only in text, but also in ancient surviving horoscopes, they're going to mention how the stars are related to the planets to verify that their calculations were correct. You should see it that way. You shouldn't try to understand the statements about the relationship between nakshatras and Rashi in a way that would contradict the statements about the zodiac signs being a result of solstices and equinoxes.
Thank you for this visually appealing presentation to clear the differences between sidereal and zodiac. First, the basics needs to be told to people who don't understand Sanskrit. The chapter 14 on which you have focused, its name is Manodhyaya. Manodhyaya means the chapter on measurement of time. So this chapter is about measuring time, not space. Because we need to know at a given point in time where are the planets in the space. So it is when and where. So you are handling a lesson that is about when, not where. Okay? And then you say in the shloka, Bhachakra Nabhav, it's the hub. No one disputes that. No one disputes the existence of tropical zodiac in Vedic astrology. Okay? Now, should we use that for ascertaining the planets in the space? That is the question. So, then you say, Tad antareshu sankranti dvitiyam punah. Fine. The meaning of which is wrong. I don't know which English interpolated version you are using. Probably that is from Reverend Burgess. I don't know. Because you seem to think that sankranti means marking borders between signs. No. Every Indian who knows anything about Sanskrit and the word sankranti would tell you that Sankranti means solar ingress. When sun steps into a sign, it is not marking the sign in the space. Okay? That's to be understood very clearly. We celebrate Makar Sankranti as Hindu festival when sun steps into Makar, that is Capricorn. Now you say Bhanur Makara Sankrantaya Sanmas Uttarayan. Yes, it's true. When sun steps into Makara, means Capricorn, we have the Uttarayan, means the northern half of the year starts. And similarly, same for the southern half of the year, when sun steps into Cancer. We know that it is not marking this Cancer, Capricorn in the sky. Then, interestingly, you have said Meshadayo Dwadashate Masastarayavha Vatsaraha. So you are saying Meshad. So you are taking this shloka which says Meshadayo, which uses the word Adi in Meshadayo, is beginning from Aries, Mesh means Aries, as meaning it is marking beginning of Aries. Here you want to accept it. But when I quoted the Brihat Prashara Shastra, you are saying where does it say? When the same word is used in Meshadi, you are saying where does it say it starts from Aries? So that kind of contradiction is here in the interpretation the way you are doing, not in the way Varhamihir wrote in his Brihat Jatak that it starts, the Aries. He says Meshashwin Prathama, means Mesh, Aries starts from Ashwini Nakshatra at the beginning, and he ties the Nakshatra Pada with the 9th division of a sign, which is Navamsha. So he is saying it is fixed. Now in his other books that you are claiming, I have already in my long list of quotes, I have already proven that it is wrong. In the Facebook also we had a debate on my wall. So you have not come back on that specific points. But what Varamir has written, he is talking about time in the chapter on Aditya Charodhyaya. Again, Aditya means sun, the movement of sun. That is how we capture time, and we ascertain the ascendant, because our day starts from sunrise to sunrise. Sunrise to sunset is the day half, and sunset to sunrise is the night half. Dinman and Ratriman. And this chapter in Surya Siddhanta is about Manodhyaya, how to capture time, not how to ascertain the planet's position in space. That is done always through nakshatra, and I have given enough proof which nakshatra. Then the first chapter in Surya Siddhanta defines the relationship between time and space, and it uses the word Paushanante. Paushan, the nakshatra that is owned by Pushan deity, which is Revati, and Revati is Paushanante, end of Revati. What is it? Ashwini. So contradiction is the way you are looking at the concept of time and space. Varamir knew what he was talking. Parashar has taught the right things, and all the other quotes that I have given, including the one in Atharvaved, that it is talking about the fixation of the zodiac. So which zodiac is fixed? Tropical or sidereal? Tropical is moving all the time at the rate of 50 seconds a year. So that's about it. We can eternally debate with videos, but we are talking text, so let's talk of text. Thank you.
Okay, you brought up Surya Siddhanta, chapter 1, Poshante, again, which in my reply to your original presentation I already explained was not a valid argument. In fact, this is a pattern that you've pretty well followed throughout the whole debate, which is you bring up an argument, I explain the flaws in it, and then you ignore that and just repeat it. So I cited a definition of the zodiac from Surya Siddhanta, which explicitly states that the solstices define the beginning of Capricorn, Cancer, and you replied with 3 complaints. First of all, you say that this definition is not about space, it's about time. Second of all, you say that Sankranti does not mean the beginning of a sign. And third of all, you express some confusion about the term Meshadi. First of all, about time, like you said, this chapter is about the measurement of time. The whole book is about the measurement of time. That's what the Surya Siddhanta is all about. The positions of the planets in space reveal the duration of time that has elapsed since the beginning of the universe. That's the whole premise of the Surya Siddhanta. And just so that we're clear about this, interpretive astrology such as Jatak or horoscopic astrology is based on this principle that time is the substrate for karma. And this is the very definition of time given by Maitreya Muni in Bhagavad Purana, is that time is the ability for the cause to create its effect. So time is the substrate for karma. So the positions of the planets are a symbolic representation of universal time. And if you have a symbolic insight into universal time, you have a symbolic insight into karma, and then you can make predictions and interpretations. So to say that something is about time, and therefore it's not about horoscopy, is completely ignorant. Now you also had some contention about the definition of the word Sankranti. And Sankranti means an event which moves from one state to another, or bridges 2 states. That's why the prefix San is used. If you just look in dictionaries, you'll see that the astronomical definition, in fact, Surya Siddhanta is cited as the source by Monio Williams. Sankranti means the ingress of the sun or a planet from one astrological location to another, as in the transfer from one sign to another. So Sankranti literally means the border of an astrological zone, such as the zodiac sign. And you complain that this only refers to the ingress of the sun into a new sign, as if the sun has different signs than the rest of the planets. And in fact, the zodiac sign is a division of the sun's orbit, and it's the sun's ingress into a new zone which defines that zone. So Sankranti is the beginning of a zone. I don't see why you're trying to get argumentative about that. It's a very simple point. Then again with Meshadi, I really don't see how this shows that you understand Sanskrit or logic at all. So I'll just restate this. Meshadi means the list of things that starts with Mesha. And Mesha means Aries, so that means Aries, Taurus, Gemini, etc. Now you were trying to say that when Parashara says Meshadi, he means the beginning of Mesha. That's wrong. Meshadi Samgyakam means a list of names beginning with Mesha. Here in my reference that I've quoted from the 14th chapter of Surya Siddhanta, Meshadayo is also used to mean the beginning of the list of names of the signs, Aries, Taurus, etc. And that's not the part that says that Mesha is on the equinox. The part that says that Mesha is on the equinox is Bhanur Makara Sankranti Sanmasa Uttarayana. That the Ayana or the solstice determines the beginning border of Capricorn. Therefore also determines the beginning border of Cancer, Aries, and Libra. It's simple. I don't see why you can't wrap your mind around that. Basically, instead, what you do is have a lot of bravado, and you continue to claim that Parashara and Brahmahira and probably God himself are on your side and not on mine. But hopefully, people who are a little more objective than you or have some intellect will be able to find some humor in that. You claim that you were going to show that the Indian texts define a sidereal zodiac, but you failed to show that the Indian texts define a sidereal zodiac. What you managed to show was that sometimes they say Aries and Ashwini begin in the same place. And as I explained in my presentation, if that was the only thing they ever said, then this would be clear and you would be right. But however, they do not only say that Aries begins with Ashwini. Sometimes they say Aries begins with Kritika, and sometimes they say Aries begins at the equinox. And especially consistently and clearly, they say that Aries begins at the equinox, and they say that Capricorn begins at the solstice. So I already explained how to resolve this and reconcile it in my main presentation, which you completely ignore. So my only hope really for this video is that hopefully some or even many of the viewers are going to be more objective and less attached than you are, and will be able to be benefited by the information presented in this video. Thank you.
So I hope this debate was very useful and enlightening. Please subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the future debates that we have on the same topic. I plan to bring multiple guests on to present their views on the sidereal side. And check out the playlist that this video is in, or eventually will be in, if you want to see all of those in succession. Thank you very much. See you next time.